into the next section. All right, so what we're going to talk about now are what are the key benefits, and we've broken this out into basically each benefit itself. And there's a section in the booklet, you skip past native plants, and the next section after that is where we have these key benefits. So the first one is looking at how we can preserve, back up here, preserving vegetative cover. So we're going to be talking about each one of these individually and talk about how it can be applied. So vegetative cover, the soils, water resources, water supply, reducing waste, biodiversity, pollinators, and air quality, and then mitigating disasters. So this is just an image of what we were talking about earlier, changing perceptions of taking and implementing these natural landscapes into the built environment. So something that's very important, and this actually comes into site planning, site development, and design, is looking at ways of preserving the existing cover wherever possible. So, you know, if you're going into a site, as soon as you disturb it, then you have to go through that process of you know, regenerating and starting over again. So one of the easiest approaches is to try to preserve and work around what's existing. So this is looking at ways of protecting, and we'll talk a little bit more about the soils, but also it protects the water quality, protecting the trees. And we have an image here where we're showing how during construction, you know, if you have existing trees on site, put up fencing, do something to keep the contractors out from both driving over the roots within the drip line of the tree, storing material within the drip line of the trees, protecting those existing trees because it takes so long in order to get them established. And if there's any way that they could be protected, it's going to minimizes a lot of other work that needs to be done. So preserves the soil structure, protects the site from invasives. You already have the cover. You have the cover there, and you don't have the influx of invasives if you have a good cover that's existing. And then just minimizing the disturbance overall. So that's just kind of a basis of it. Protecting the soils, we talked a lot about this yesterday, and I can't emphasize more the importance of protecting the soil, just the integrity of the soils themselves. As soon as that soil is compacted, it's a huge challenge to try and improve that, to take it back to what it had been before. That's probably one of the biggest issues we have with establishing, especially these bioretention areas and areas where you want to have infiltration occur, is just during the construction process, they start driving machinery across these sites, and it just seals it up. And it's a challenge, and again, a little preventive work, making sure that your contractor understands, knows how to go in and work from the edge to excavate, knows that they shouldn't be driving across it because there's a lot of cost and expense in going back in and remediating, especially the soil. So this is critical. There has been a lot of discussion lately on what we're terming structural soils. How many of you are familiar with the term structural soils or has used them? Okay. Jim's been and okay. There is a soil, I guess, out of Cornell, and it's not coming to my name. What's it called? What's Cornell's mix? Structural soils?
They call it CU structural soils.
Okay. And it's basically, if you look it up, if you look up CU soils, they have taken a certain aggregate size and an amount of organic matter that is very, very specific, and they have found that it's almost it kind of, you know, this is a good kind of diagram of what it is. It's kind of a balance between the porosity, the roughness of that the stone particle that helps to protect the void space, but also provides the organic matter. And it's a really kind of a delicate balance, but they found that with these structural soils, they're able to protect the infiltration as well as provide support for vegetation. So it's used a lot for like tree plantings in urban areas and things like that, where you are looking at using those tree plantings for your stormwater or for infiltration purposes. And you know, and unfortunately, we're going to this degree with trying to create soil that is, you know, has that porosity and also can support vegetation, whereas, you know, undisturbed soil that has not been disturbed over time already has a lot of those components in them, and oftentimes we affect it just in how we're driving across it, how we're using it, how it's been compacted or changed over time. So I think we're seeing a lot of this in agricultural practices now, and you know, different approaches to protecting the soil structure and protecting the soil texture, as opposed to going in and having to remediate and go to this degree. So soils, again, critical component of it. Okay, so protecting our water resources is another huge benefit. We've been talking on and on about this, so I'm not going to get into it in a lot of detail. Reducing wastewater amounts, increasing water infiltration and filtration, which is something that's really important. Increasing groundwater recharge. I think we're starting to see a lot more related to identifying critical areas for recharge, and then using you know, the vegetation and these sustainable landscapes to help convey water into and to protect our groundwater supplies. Reducing water use and protecting and enhancing surface water. So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail when we talk about it. Improving human relationship with nature. This is something that I guess has caught me a little off guard, and we're hearing this more and more, and I don't know whether you are in your practices and things like that, but children that are just basically have just aren't in nature enough as much, and we're hearing about it more in some of our projects down closer to the city and things like that, where you know, parents don't want their children even, they're concerned about the safety and of their children being in the environment, and so it's really kind of disheartening, I guess, in a way. But you know, if there's anything that we can do to improve that human relationship with nature and bringing more biodiversity into the landscape, I think is one approach to that. There's a lot of benefits to it for growing up and being from Blair County. This is probably something that you guys can't even really relate to, because you're, you know, so entrenched in such a beautiful landscape. So, but we're seeing it more and more in some of our projects, and from things that we hear from from some clients. So the benefits far outweigh, the other component of it. So protecting our water supply, you've probably heard this, about 1% of the earth is fresh water. Rainwater should be treated as a valuable resource, and there's numerous water conservation techniques that are out there. Everything from xeriscaping, I think, is a big term in the Southwest, especially with the drought going on, and it's basically planting plant material that really don't even need water, and using rain barrels, cisterns, porous paving, rain gardens, and bioswales to help protect our water supply. But we worked on a project up in Center County. It related to wellhead protection and source water protection. And I remember talking to one of the hydrogeologists, I guess about 10 years ago, and he was talking about how it was something I had never even really thought about that much, but the sewage treatment plants discharge into the streams. Well, that water is, it's basically pulled up from wells, from the aquifer, discharged into the sewage treatment plants, and then discharged into the stream system, so it's leaving the aquifer. And it slowly, over time, is depleting our aquifers. And I just never connected on that too much. I guess nobody really thinks about that too much. They think, well, how much can it be? But it's a sizable amount of water. So I don't know how much you're aware of the work that the Center Region, what's the Center Region Authority, Water Authority?
University Area Joint Authority.
That's it, yes. Are you familiar with what they're doing with, okay. You might be able to explain it to us.
Well, beneficial reuse is what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. And being able to basically, at the end of the sewage treatment process, the water is processed to the point where it's drinkable. And they're actually looking at reusing that water and bringing it back into the watershed and regenerating into the aquifer. So it's being piped. My understanding is it's being piped to a certain location where it's being discharged into like a floodplain area, ideally to infiltrate the groundwater. So that's pretty exciting stuff, and that's kind of a big picture of this whole protecting the water supply. It's looking at those aquifers and how we can take and recharge and try and get this water back into our aquifer to keep it going. There was a study in northern Lancaster County. It was part of the state water plan. It was a water budget study that the Susquehanna River Basin Commission did about 10 years ago. And they selected northern Lancaster County because the aquifer it's relatively small. It only covers about 13 municipalities. We call it kind of a bathtub because it was a little bit more contained. And they actually studied and identified how much longer the water in that aquifer is going to last. And it was pretty eye-opening. They were able to do it because it was a more contained aquifer and a little bit smaller. Most of the other aquifers in the state are pretty significant. In fact, my understanding is there's even these subsurface rivers that connect some of the aquifers, so they are interconnected to a degree. But it's pretty eye-opening, especially in an area like ours where we really haven't had any water quantity issues. With wells, it's been, we've had a pretty good water supply. So it's really something important. It's really something to think about. Reducing waste, and a lot of times this is tied to buildings. This is a big credit related to LEED and using recycled material, using indigenous material, and things like that. We also see the potential, I mean, this can be done on a site too, and using resources from a site to actually create amenities and things like that. So this project is actually a church, and it's a pretty significant slope at the back of where the church was, and they had to raise the building because of the amount of limestone. The bedrock was pretty close to the surface, so they had to blast a fair amount, but they raised the building and they had this steep slope in the back, and there was a huge pile of just all of this kind of random stone, and rather than crush it and take it out or use it for something else, they actually used it to create an amphitheater in the back of the church. So, you know, it's just being creative, looking at the resources that you have on your site and trying to reuse it is important. Protecting wildlife habitat and biodiversity. We talked a little bit yesterday about the connectivity, linkages, the importance of connecting these features, and looking at the landscape beyond just, you know, here's my site, I'm going to seed it all with lawn, and then I'm going to add these little features into it. Reversing that approach and looking at how the context of the site, and then working into that with, you know, your actual features that create that connectivity. And Jim and I talked a lot about you know, trails and these people related circulation connections. Well, it can be applied with wildlife too, and to help increase biodiversity. So just by creating these links, maybe it's a buffer on the back of a property that links a forest patch here to a corridor along the stream. You know, maybe that buffer, it could just be in how it's planted, adding some plant material that has, you know, berries and food and shelter for wildlife. It can create just enough to create that corridor protection that connects that patch with this is really important. So from a habitat standpoint, from a biodiversity standpoint, and it also creates some vertical structure. So grouping those plants, layering them to create a combination of ground covers as well as shrubs, as well as the tree canopy is really important. And then the connectivity between habitats. I don't know if I have a picture. No, I don't have a picture here. We were out in Oregon, I guess, last year, and there's a huge plant. The planters outside of Bend, and I think it was the Sisters watershed out there. They are actually looking at, done a lot of planning work on migration of different animals and wildlife, and these pretty significant corridors through the entire watershed. And all of these studies, and I thought it was really fascinating. I don't know, I'm not aware of Pennsylvania or anyone in our region really looking at migration corridors on that level. You know, this is more of a site, kind of a regional level, but this was really looking at a much larger scale, looking at migration patterns. So it was really it was interesting to see the amount of planning work that they have done related to that. Protecting pollinators. This is something that we're hearing more and more about, especially with the decline in the bee population and the issues associated, how that is really affecting the economy, especially with farmers and those with orchards and things like that. So again, these sustainable landscapes provide a variety of plant material, as well as the ever important pollinator species that provide the water source, the nesting site, and reduces the pesticide application, which is what I think they're linking a lot of the honeybee reduction in honeybees too. So this is this is really important too. And then looking at ways of mitigating disaster with a lot of the more significant, seemingly storm events that are occurring, and I think communities are seeing the potential of looking beyond just more structural approaches to mitigating flooding and stormwater issues, but are there some of these projects, could they be used to mitigate flooding and disasters related to that? So Pennsylvania Society of Floodplain Managers, is anybody in here in that group? Okay. I think they've really been going a long way with looking at mitigation of flooding, and there's been a lot of communities that have been hit hard in the last 10 years with flooding. So looking at ways that these sustainable landscapes can be used to help to prevent these types of issues from happening. So one approach, and these are some pictures from yesterday, so I apologize for those that have already seen this. I think Ben showed this project yesterday. He was talking about stormwater management, but it's just more of a point, and looking at stream systems. Now this project wasn't, this isn't a legacy sediment project. This was more of a floodplain reconnection project. It's on a residence, and so it's a little bit smaller scale at this point, but the whole point is looking at ways that we can restore the floodplain and mitigate flooding, provide that storage area by allowing those floodwaters to spread out, restoring our floodplain so that they flood is what it comes down to, and using those areas to provide the volume and also to reduce the energy to dissipate those flows across the whole area. So this is kind of a good example of that whole idea of function, and before the plants even have become established, you can really see the function of the site and how during a major storm event, and I think this was Tropical Storm Lee, Lancaster County had gotten about 18 inches in about a 2-week period, and of course it was only a couple weeks after we finished construction on the project, but it really tested the function of the project, and it shows that as opposed to the water gushing through this really incised channel, which increases the energy and the amount of damage, it's spread out over a pretty wide area. So, and also provides some greater flood storage to protect. So looking at those types of approaches, maybe on a larger scale, to address some of those bigger issues. And then protecting water or air quality. This is twofold, not just reducing the amount of machines and the harmful pollutant byproducts of mowing and maintenance and string trimmers and all the other gadgets and tools that are needed to rule our turf, I guess, to also creating more, habitat, or not habitat, tree cover, forested conditions, and the benefits of that to filter air pollutants. Okay, so a summary. Basically what we're looking at is that these sustainable landscapes are designed to, benefit the environment and, improve the functional and efficiency and aesthetics of the areas. Using native plants, the appropriate site for site conditions. Andy's going to be talking more specifically about native plants. Institutes a management plan for the removal and prevention of invasive plants. So again, Andy will be talking a little bit more about that. We talked about the habitat and wildlife, increasing biodiversity, improving air quality and air pollution, and clean water and healthy soils. So I think that is pretty much it. Oh, okay. I'm going to go through. This is the Sustainable Sites Initiative. This is their rating system. Has anyone used this? Has any of you guys used it? I haven't seen it required on any projects, and I haven't had any clients do. Are you aware of anyone that's used it?
I think they used it at a couple sites in New York, but around here, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay.
Liz, do you know any?
I don't know anybody that's used it, and this is not one of the things what came out of the community effort, is it? Lead community.
It's a spin-off from LEED. A lot of people were upset with the LEED process, that it wasn't, there are projects without buildings on them that were environmentally friendly, so they were pushing for a LEED type certification for just site work.
I guess what I would say is within the lead context, because of that, they looked at community standards.
Yeah, there are two different things.
Okay,
They are.
I thought this was different.
Yeah, Sustainable Sites came out of ASLA, who really, they sort of looked at the LEED model, but there's really no direct connection between Sustainable Sites and LEED.
But the lead community, I have heard of more folks, more entities that are requiring green infrastructure, or at least performance standards for stormwater that drive through.
Yeah, the LEED
Those have
communities.
been looking at lead communities.
Yeah, the LEED communities certification focuses a lot on low impact development. You know, there really has to be development of sustainable sites. There doesn't necessarily have to be new building construction.
Anyway, that was.
Yeah, no, I think that from the standpoint of these performance benchmarks, I think it's helpful as a guide. At this point, if as with LEED, it's really driven by the client and whether they're interested in pursuing that certification for their projects. But I think for purposes of this, it's just basically understanding the benchmarks and the process, which is, it's a lot similar to what we talked about yesterday, but very, very specific. So looking at the, selection of the site, where is the site, the context, the assessment, we'll be talking about this a little bit later, the site analysis component of it, and planning, so you understand the basis. Site design, then really looking at water, soil and vegetation, material selection, and then the human health and well-being, which is those things that we just went over. What can be done during construction and protection of it, and construction measures. We talked a little bit about that. Operations and maintenance, monitoring and innovation, really important stuff. We'll talk more about that, the importance of basically designing for and understanding construction and maintenance. It's all together. It's all the same thing. You have to understand that as part of the design. So, so that's part of it. Okay, so.